Hey, my friends, this is Jose E. Alvarez, and I am so excited to be with you in this new podcast called Pitfalls That Prevent Walking in the Holy Spirit. It's a long journey of 47 years, but I want to start today in what I call the beginning, give you an introduction of who I am and how it all started for me. And it's my first podcast, so let's just get on with it right now. All right, my name is Jose Alvarez, and I was born on the island of Cuba in the 1950s. My father and mother, they're both dead now, but my father was a successful businessman, especially in selling insurance, life insurance for many years in Cuba. Um, and Cuba was a great place. I was a young guy to grow up in. But I do remember when Castro came in, I was very young. I do remember we used to live in a upper middle neighborhood near Havana. I remember when Castro's men came in, his militia, his soldiers, came into my house and went through the closets and investigated stuff. They came in the green militia outfits in the 1950s. And I heard about other things that Castro was doing and how he took my grandmother's school that had been the largest private school in Cuba, took it away from her, shut down businesses, that kind of stuff. So my parents started to see that there was something not going right. And it really was the hand of God because I'm a Christian, but they were not Christians. But it's like God really guided them and protected them and took us out of Cuba just in time. It was myself, my mother, um, a nanny. She was like a second mother. She's dead now, but she had been with our family for so many years, and she was part of our family. She really was. She left Cuba with us, so it was six people. It was my father and mother, my three siblings, and this lady that had been like a second mother to me. I don't remember much. We left on a Pan American flight, probably in 1962, 61, 62. I was about 7 or 8 years of age. I remember that Castro did not allow anything to come out of Cuba. Even he would go through the women's private parts, so that no jewelry could be taken out. So we left with the clothes on our backs only, but we left in time before things really got bad in Cuba. Many experiences of Cuba that I cannot remember. I remember when I was in um, watching a movie, and there was a humongous explosion in Havana, and I found out later on that it was this ship called um, La Cumbre or El Cumbre. We don't know if it was Castro or something else, but there was a mighty explosion in the Havana harbor as I was watching a movie in Havana, and it killed a lot of people. The glasses at the stores and the mannequins fell out and broke. So, anyways, we left in time and went to Miami. Um, and my father started to immediately work with someone in the insurance business that he knew. I guess that they had met in Cuba, and he had an insurance business back in Miami in the early 1960s. I still remember some of those times. Um, and he knew that it would not be profitable for him in Miami. The competition was fierce. So he said, where can I go and sell life insurance? So he went and started to investigate. He investigated the U.S. Virgin Islands, which is a U.S. territory bought from Denmark in 1917, I think for $7 million. But it's a U.S. territory. You use the American dollar there. You do not need to have a passport to go there. you can become a U.S. citizen there, like I did. So he discovered that in St. Croix, Virgin Islands, the largest of the three Virgin Islands, there was no life insurance being sold in the 1960s. My parents have always took really good care of us. So on we left Miami. Probably I was 8 or 9 years of age. I don't even know the time, but and we went to St. Croix, Virgin Islands. I remember when I was in the airplane and we were approaching St. Croix, I looked down and I said, man, does anybody live here? Because I looked down and it was just darkness, darkness. And I don't remember all the details, but it was darkness. I remember that we landed in the Alexander Hamilton Airport back in those days in St. Croix, Virgin Islands, on a Halloween night. The six of us. And I remember that there was a few little kids running around in the airport with the Halloween masks on. And, you know, some friends of my parents picked us up, I think, from the airport and took us to their house. And we ate dinner with them. And then my father had found a little apartment on what is called Turquoise Bay. It was some little apartments by the beach in St. Croix. St. Croix was an amazing place to grow up. Anyways, so that's how we started. That's how I started. And my father and mother worked day and night to provide for us. My father got an office on Antilles Street in Christenstead, St. Croix. And you know, I remember now the public schools back in St. Croix back in those days were not that great. So even though my parents had to work day and night to provide for us because we had just left Cuba, they always sent us to private schools. I went to two private schools in St. Croix. First of all, during my elementary school years, I went to St. Dunstan's Elementary. Just met a lot of little kids. Some of them, a few of them, I still see them. I still see them on Facebook. I do. I still have one really good friend that I grew up with in St. Croix, and we have maintained our friendship all these years. So I do remember one experience when I was in St. Dunstan's. I was in third grade, and they would give us a break during lunch, and sometimes we would walk, a bunch of us, with some older kids. It was just not the little kids. We would walk. There was some little restaurants, some little places down the hill because St. Croix is all hilly. Down the hill from the school, some little places to eat, and we went down there to eat. And we came back, and we went back to the classroom. And just as we entered into the classroom, someone told me President John F. Kennedy has been shot. And imagine everything stopped for that day and became very, very sad. Reported that he had died, and school just let out. It just let out. I don't remember exactly what happened, but you know, imagine the assassination of President John F. Kennedy was an incredible thing, even in St. Croix, because it's a U.S. territory, you know? So, anyways, so I grew up there. Then I went to Good Hope High School. I went from St. Dunstan's Elementary to Good Hope High School. And I met a lot of stuff there. I met a lot of kids there. I still have contact with some of those people. Some of them have died. Some of them I still have some contact with. Anyways, so there was no good schools, universities in St. Croix. And, you know, in St. Croix, I started drinking beer. I don't know I don't think it was pot, but just a lot of beer. I had my own car. I had a golden Camaro, really fast car with a V8 engine, 350 something, 320 something cubic inch V8 engine. How gasoline was back in those days, like $1 or something. Anyways, so I started to apply to universities on the mainland, and I realized that uh, the university on the mainland, they would they wanted foreign students back in those days. They wanted people from the Virgin Islands. Uh, Not because my grades have been especially good, because my SAT scores were just average, but because I was from St. Croix and they wanted international people from other countries. They allowed me to go into Vanderbilt, which was a really top-notch school and a really hard school. Well, I was not prepared for Vanderbilt. I'd gotten in there with average scores, and they, I immediately started to go partying, 18 or 19 years of age, started to get into drugs. My drugs was not bad drugs. Honestly, my whole life I was scared of heroin. I did cocaine one time. I was very scared of those drugs. I really was. Just drinking, but a lot of partying, a lot of pot smoking, a lot of the old, the old, the purple lights with those posters that lit up and that kind of stuff. But I fell into partying and women and drugs and drinking. And imagine one thing was, in those days there was no cell phones. In the 1972 when I got to Vanderbilt, the first concert I saw there was Grateful Dead. There was no way to talk to your parents or family. There was no support system back in those days. There was no cell phones. There was no Facebook. There was no text messages. There was no FaceTime. That really hurt me. So I was very alone. If I wanted to call my parents from St. Croix, it was a long distance phone call. Anyways, long story short, I fell into sin, into drugs, and going out to the clubs at nighttime because Vanderbilt is in Nashville, Tennessee, and going down to all the clubs and those ones, going out with girls, that kind of stuff, and going back to the bedroom and all that kind of stuff. Anyways, and my grades really started to suffer, and my grades really started to suffer, and I couldn't tell my parents. I did not have that communication with my parents, and I could not talk to them on the phone. It was very, very lonely. And anyways, long story short, I dropped out of Vanderbilt in my third year. Now, by the time that I had gone to Vanderbilt and come back, my parents had moved from St. Croix to Miami, Florida. So I went back to Miami, Florida as a college dropout from Vanderbilt. And my parents were extremely hurt and extremely angry at me because Vanderbilt was very expensive. My father had just been in St. Croix for a few years, and they had worked very hard to give me enough money to go to a top-notch school, which I was not even ready to go to. They were very, very angry at me. Long story short, they were getting divorced. They were very upset. My father left home. He eventually got remarried again. It was very, very hard for my mother to see my father leave. Then I found myself very, very lonely. I worked in little menial jobs because we were living in Key Biscayne, Florida. And my father, even in his anger, he said, well, listen, I'm going to give you a little part-time job He was working in a little insurance. He got his little office, his insurance office in St. Croix. And he said, you know what? He was very angry at me, but my parents were excellent parents. He says, I'm going to give you a little job to just file paperwork for me, like a clerk. So I was a college dropout in Miami, very lonely, lost, and where my father's little office was at in Miami, I became desperate. I remember I had an experience at Vanderbilt. Um, I think I tried to seek at Vanderbilt when things got really bad. But when I was at Vanderbilt, I'll tell you these experiences because they're really something else. I was really hurting at Vanderbilt, during those days. As I said, no contact with my parents, very, very lost, no support system, taking drugs, that kind of stuff. And an organization called Campus Crusade for Christ, which I think it was Bill Bright. I don't know if Campus Crusade for Christ is still going on. But there were some people from Campus Crusade for Christ. I remember that in the cafeteria at Vanderbilt, they would come, and I met a man there, Tom was his name, and he befriended me, and we started talking about the Lord. I never talked about the Lord, but we started talking about the Lord. And though I was so much into just drugs and drinking and partying and going out with women, I said, there's something about these Christian people. There's a peace and a kindness and a niceness that they have that they have that I don't have. And I started to get closer to the Campus Crusade for Christ. But I said to them, well, you know what? Because I also enjoy partying. I enjoy going out with women. I enjoy taking marijuana. And I said to them, well, you know what? If I follow this Jesus Christ, do I have to give up all these things? They didn't tell me that I had to, or they told me that I was going to end up doing it. So I pushed them away. Then, at the same time, there was an incident that happened to me, and a very, very traumatic incident that happened to me, personal incident that happened to me at Vanderbilt, that really shook me up. It left me distressed. It left me with heart palpitations, chest pains, and I was going to go to the campus nurse. My brother, who's now deceased, he was walking with the Lord back in those days. He said to me, why didn't you ask Jesus to heal you? Here I am by myself in my little room back at Vanderbilt, taking drugs, getting very bad grades. Before I left for like Miami, before I dropped out, this is before I dropped out to go to Miami. My brother said, why don't you ask God to heal you? Because I was so agitated, so nervous, I could not sleep at night. So I said, God, if you're real, come and heal me. And I was laying on my back in that little room in Carmichael Towers at Vanderbilt. I was a sophomore. And as I lay there and I looked to this roof, to the ceiling, it's like I saw an invisible hand come down. I saw the hand coming down from heaven, going into my chest. And I fell asleep. I had not gone to sleep for weeks after this very stressful incident that happened to me. And I went to sleep. This hand went right into my chest. The next day I woke up and I was at total peace. The anxiety had left me. The tension had left me. That was an incident that happened to me. But I pushed God away because I said, well, I don't want to give up the women and the partying and the drugs. Long story short, after I quit Vanderbilt on my third year. I went back now to Miami, Florida. My parents were very angry, as I told you. My father and mother were getting divorced, and my father gave me that little job at his insurance agency. I think it was Flagler Street. Don't remember now. I was at the end of my rope. At the end of my rope, dropped out of a top-notch school. My parents were very angry at me. I found myself without any skills, nothing that I could do. And as I was working, filing paperwork at my father's office, there was a little church across the way, and I realized that they were open during lunch. I don't know. I think it was a Catholic church, and I started going there during lunch, and I was really at the end of my rope. I had done so many things wrong for so many years, and I went to an empty church. I know what it is to hit rock bottom. I know what it is to hit rock bottom. I hit rock bottom. And I didn't know if God was a Christian, if God was a Hindu, if God was anything, any religion, Hare Krishnas or the Buddhists or the Hindus or people, the New Age people and the crystals. I had no idea. Or if it was Jesus Christ. I did not know that. And I went to that empty church day after day during lunchtime. And suddenly I felt the presence of love. The love that I felt, my friends, was not a human love. It was not the love of a woman. It was beyond that love. Now I realized it was the Holy Spirit. And I said, God, whoever you are, if you're real, save me because I'm not going to make it. Save me because I'm not going to make it. I truly hit the rock bottom. I was at the bottom of the barrel. Then I had that experience of a love that was so immense and so pure and so wonderful and so sweet that I had never felt. So for 5 or 6 days, I cried to this unknown God. Whoever you are, God, rescue me, help me. And I would feel this love come to me. Love to come to me. And I did not know who this love was. One time when I was in that empty church and I was encountering this presence of love, which now I know is the Holy Spirit, I suddenly had a desire to go to a Bible bookstore that I could walk to because I didn't have a car and get myself a Bible. I had never read the Bible in my whole life. As a matter of fact, I had seen some Bibles, the Gideon Bibles, I think, in the hotel rooms, and it was the most boring book I'd seen in my whole life. But something took me, and I walked to the store, and I bought myself this green living Bible, a great Bible. And when I opened it up, it was like a rainbow of colors and burst of lights. And everything became vivid and colorful. And I realized that this unknown God, this whoever he was, I realized that it was Jesus Christ. It was not Mohammed. It was not Buddha. It was not Confucius. It was not the crystals. It was Jesus Christ. I just knew, and I knew that Jesus Christ had all the answers. All the answers to the money and the women and the love, everything. Jesus Christ had it, everything. And I started like that. That's how my journey started, by starting at the very beginning. Okay, my friends, thank you so much for listening to this, my first podcast. And I'm going to see how this even works. It's my first podcast, but grateful to be with you. I don't know if you can leave comments here. I got no idea. Okay, God bless you and have a wonderful, wonderful day.